Conversations with Elders, hosted by yours truly, Louis-Virie Blanche, welcoming you, where we will be TED Talking in tongues with the elders of all ages, all generations, all races, cultures, and creeds. All gender, religious, or political preferences will be honored and encouraged. Conversations with Elders, where it is our treasured pleasure to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light to you in honor of the queendom come, soul dancing free to life's heartbeat drum in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, sharing the blessings of love's perfect stranger. Deja vu.
It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic.
Aloha, hola, aho, hello. This is Louis-Virie Blanche, and we are rolling out the red carpet of golden liquid love light in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, warrior, priestess, goddess, and friend. And believe it or not, I have someone with us today, Dr. Enolia Foti, who embodies all those beautiful personifications of femininity. Aloha, my beloved Enolia. How great to have you here.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for affording me this opportunity to invite me to such an esteemed platform. I truly appreciate it.
Wow. Well, I'm zooming. We're on Zoom, but I'm zooming. I got goosebumps. I don't know if you call it goosebumps or chicken skin or whatever it is, but I'm electrified. Your presence when we first met on the Mystic Minds Network. We met through the Mystic Minds Network, actually.
Yes.
And it's been a blessing. You know, I will give a more formal introduction of all your. I coined a word recently called Renaissancean. It's a person that has multifaceted skills, talents, and abilities, and you are truly capable of. You don't have one business card, you've got like a portfolio of them, you know.
I do. My dad used to call it jack of all trades, master at none. I'm definitely more of a generalist across the board. You know, may not be an expert in any one thing, but
But
I love that.
they say that's the way to be, because you don't want to be focused like in a vacuum. And the cross-referencing of ideologies and studies, you know, it's like the quantum entanglement of all that humans can get involved in. When you only see what you are focused on and don't see the connection with other aspects, it's limiting. So being that Jack or Jill of all trades is, you know, centralized specialties can be very limiting. And some say that that limitation was purposely put there so that, you know, I guess there's a wisdom that says your left hand doesn't know what your right hand's doing. Or what is the prophecy? It says, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. It's
I'm not quite sure, but I've definitely
something
heard
along those lines.
Yes.
The hands got to come together. The hands, we have to unite and take a little bit from here, a little bit from there. That reminds me of the gumbo. You know how I'm that Cherokee, Lumbee, Choctaw, Blackfoot, Afro-French Creole gumbo yaya guy. And when the gumbo pot is getting seasoned, hey, you Africans, put some flavor in. Hey, you Indians, you East Indians, and you Native American indigenous people, you Europeans, you Asians, come put seasoning in the pot.
Right.
It's going to come out great. But you have been, I noticed in your website a lot of incredible achievements and talents. one of the things that stood out was your soul coaching. But you know, you're going to do an event in California in August.
Yes, I am. August 31st, I'm going to team up with David Grood, who is a channeler that we both know, and Susan Dunn, who is a breathwork alignment worker. And I'm going to do shamanic ceremony there, taking people to hopefully next dimension.
Now, in regards to that event, you're listed as a grandmother elder.
Yes, that is correct.
And that's one of the many hats or chapeaus or crowns that you wear.
That is the most important crown that I wear. That is the most important one to me.
Wow,
You
beautiful.
could call all of the other things, you know, I don't want to sound belittling, but titles are titles.
Yes.
You know, titles are titles, but to be an elder, to be recognized as a grandmother was the single most important thing that I've ever achieved in my life. And I am so grateful because under the eyes of the creator and those that he has blessed, he sees that I'm able to stand among them. And to me, that means the world.
Well, you know, when I say we honor
Yeah.
mother, daughter, sister, lover, warrior, priestess, goddess, friend, I have to add grandmother to that. Because you know, I recall, I don't know, you probably have these moments too, where sitting with the elders or amongst the elders, like I had a Cherokee family lived next door to where I was growing up in North Carolina, this elderly couple. And I remember sitting, her name was Mrs. Evans, and I remember sitting at her feet. And then I remember the moments with my grandfather and my grandmother, just the blessing of those moments is so priceless. And oftentimes, like in the cultures that you've traveled through, you've been doing a lot of work with multicultural situations. But you know, in Mexico and in the indigenous world, families are all together. They're not living separate. And they honor and respect the elders. They don't banish them off to some senior citizens home.
Right.
You know, and I think the nurturing of the wisdom of a deeply seasoned soul and a refined spirit that has been open to the essence of nurturing, like a grandmother's essence is something that's incomparable. And we need to really thank you and be thankful beyond expression as to what that means. I'm trying to think of the lady, I interviewed her. You know the book about the grandmothers, the 13 grandmothers?
Yes, the 13 Indigenous grandmothers,
Yes.
profound impact in my life. Yes, I do.
Do you recall the lady that wrote that book?
I believe, oh, which one was it? I don't know if it was grandmother Margaret. No, it wasn't the grandmothers. It was their friend she was always wearing white. I can see her face. She was the person that acknowledged them, recognized them, brought them together. She's out of
Right.
California and I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
Mm,
I
but I
had
know
I
exactly.
spent a long afternoon with her actually in New York City. And ironically, I went to New York City to see our beloved other mutual brother, the gentleman that has the takes people on journeys to Peru.
Okay.
You know his wife and Anthony? No, what is his name?
Mm, I can't, I'm drawing a blank right now.
I am too. But anyway, it was like I went to New York to see him. And the lady that wrote the book on the 13 indigenous grandmothers was staying at a theater in New York called the 13th Street Repertory Theater,
Okay.
which has an interesting history in that it had been an underground railroad station when the slaves were traveling from the south and going north. There was you might say, an escape route or a passageway. The Underground Railroad was what it was called, but the 13th Repertory Theater was run by a lady named Edith, and she was in her 90s, and the lady that wrote the 13 Indigenous Grandmothers book was living there. And I spent an afternoon with her, and I want to say this thought has just popped into my mind. Have you ever done the Day Out of Time ceremonies, or the Zenith passage as it's called?
No.
Because
No,
on
I haven't.
the 25th through the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, and 29th of July, and of course today is the 27th, I have some Mayan and Aztec elders that I traveled with to do this, what was originally called a Day Out of Time ceremony.
Okay.
And it's now being called the Zenith Passage. But
Okay.
starting with Teotihuacan in Mexico, going to the Zocalo on the 25th is at Teotihuacan. The 26th is in the Zocalo of Mexico City. The 27th is in Tepoztlan, Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it's they go to Malinalco. And I spoke to you about Malinalco is like the land of the white butterfly. It's a finishing temple for women. And then the last ceremony on the 29th is in Xochicalco, which is you go into the earth, into a cave, and there's a spot in the ceiling where, you know, this procession of the sun comes through this area in Xochicalco. But the Teotihuacan, Zocalo, Tepoztlan, Malinalco, Xochicalco journey is actually taking place as we speak. And I was curious if in your journeys with the indigenous elders that you've studied and traveled with, if that's ever crossed your path.
It's really interesting in the respect that I have visited some of these places before I understood the importance of them. So I sit there and I listen to Teotihuacan, and I've been there.
Yes, yes.
And I've spent time there, and I bonded, and at the time, you know, it was just like, okay, I'm passing through Teotihuacan. But I didn't know in the respect of how it fit into all of the other areas and places and engagements that I should have been aware about. And Spirit has kind of done that with me my whole life. It's like I've been there, I've engaged, I connected, but then I look back and I go, if I had known this, and this, I would have did more. I would have spoke with more. I would have, you know, and I sit there of all of the beautiful places I've been across this world. And, you know, Spirit brings you to these places for a reason and for a season, when Spirit wants you to be there, when the Creator wants you to be there, and not when you deem it sometimes important.
Right.
So I've just accepted that. I've accepted that, and I understood it. And when I think back about the time that I spent in Peru, and I've gotten to go to many beautiful places and done beautiful ceremonies with locals and with the Quiros, Indians of Peru, and just have been so blessed in being in the space and gleaning their teachings at the time. of engagement, and understanding that each one of us just brings that ripple effect and that importance for what our engagement is.
Well, I noticed, I took notes on some of your experiences and endeavors, and it says you've traveled with indigenous elders from around the world: Native American, Canadian, African, New Zealand, South American, European nations.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask you, one of the first quick ones I wanted to ask you about is, are you familiar with the term muti?
I've heard the term muti before, but how do you define it?
You're in South Africa.
Hmm.
There's a lady
What?
named Carolyn Casey. I don't know if you've heard about her. She's on KPFA radio in the Northern California, the Berkeley area.
Okay.
She calls herself a trickster. She's like this word-playing goddess. She worked with Carl Jung, and but she loves to play with words and then go into the etymology of a word.
Hmm.
And I heard her speaking, and she used this word muti, saying in South Africa it's a word that means wisdom and power.
Hmm.
But when I Googled it, which is neither here nor there, there's some shadowy aspects to how that term is thought of. It's a type of ritual. But her perspective on it was muti means wisdom and power. And I think
So
the way she was talking, she says it's time for us to get in cahoots with our wolf trickster. Like, she's very much into the wolf being a trickster.
yes, yes, and it's interesting because you talk about South African energy and the Sanusis and the Sangomas that are there, and I was blessed by meeting a Sangoma who recognized and saw in me the gifts that I brought and just engaged me as equal, not like as, okay, well, you're an outsider wanting to come in and know things. And so in the time that I spent with her, we went to just outside of Eagles, well, just outside of Vicksburg, actually, outside of Vicksburg, which is north of Johannesburg. I want to say it's north of Johannesburg. I might be a little bit off on my map. But we went to the Sangoma's cave. And basically, that is where many, many, many Sangomas live. They live in one specific area in a cave. The cave is like an open, it's like a mother's womb.
Mhm.
You traverse up a mountainside, and then when you get there, you basically see the stations by which they pray. And I was able to participate in prayer. Um, the people that I engage, some knew I was coming before I came.
Oh,
The conversations that they had with me were like, this is what you are going to do, this is what you are doing, this is what you will do. It's really profound. I met this woman, she was darker than me with piercing blue eyes, Sangoma.
mhm.
And I could see my full reflection in her eye. Now, you have to understand that you don't see your full reflection in somebody's eye. When you're looking at them eye to eye, standing in close proximity, you see your face.
Right.
No. So, what that cave represented to me was like the spiritual place where the energy was so high that they were all at just like this level of engagement that transcended words, understandings. It was communicated, but it didn't have to be verbally spoken.
Oh. Mhm. Mhm.
And to have been accepted, because again, it was like, here I was, still young, still on my path, still, thirsting for more, wanting to find my place, didn't know if I had enough experience to claim my place and say, I am X, or I am a grandmother. I wasn't a grandmother at the time, but again, everywhere that I've ever traversed, elders see something in me and then engaged me. And that happened to me there, where one Sangoma called me over and she was like, I've been waiting for you. Come, I'm ready to talk to you now. Okay. I don't know you from anything, but I'm coming,
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And the insight and what she said to me, I'll just never forget. It was just something that I cherish to this day. But it told me that I was on the right path. It told me that I wasn't in my ego. And she told me where my strength was. And that I was in no uncertain terms supposed to practice and strengthen even more. And those were the moments where you're like, it marks your life. You're never going to forget. You're just never going to forget. I believe that South Africa either embraces you or spits you out. You're either going to love it or you're going to dislike it. And if it loves you, you stay, you engage, you work, you do it. And if it doesn't want you there, just nothing works right. Nothing is right. And it either embraces you or spits you out. There's a couple of places like that. Brazil was like that too.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot of those places that are so infused with spiritual essence, they do that. They will call you, they will attract and magnetize people, but not everyone is able to put roots down there. And these innocent introductions, you've been a blessing in my life, in that the infinite way conversations we've had, you've allowed me to digest and recontemplate those moments as you're describing, when for no reason at all you find yourself somewhere meeting people at the right place and right time. And it's such a confirmation of, you said three things and they're in the recording, but you spoke about not being of ego, where you were going, and there was a third facet to what you shared. Now, it reminds me, I have something that I planned on talking to you about, and I like to talk to people about what I call their Trinity of inspiration. Like in the journey of your heart. And you can have a multiplicity of Trinities. But there may be in the wisdom of your empirical understandings and your experiential knowing, your relationship with that, what I call ancient futuristic inner knowingness. What would you say is your primary Trinity of inspiration? Like what you might think of it as what you've learned, the wisdom you've gathered. I also tell people sometimes to think of it, if you were using your last breath and you wanted to share the ultimate with your loved ones or those that were with you as you're about to breathe your last breath, what would that Trinity of inspiration be for you?
That's wow, that's a profound question. And the first thing that comes to mind is that Trinity is I am always under the I am presence of the creator.
Oh. Mhm.
So many of us think that spiritualism is just like this idea. And what I've learned is that it's not an idea, it's living, breathable reality. And you come to realize that in the universe that you traverse, when you are able to see your life and see yourself as you are living that human consciousness, but understanding that it can be looked at from that inner verse outwardly instead of outward and not really understanding the inner, if that makes any sense.
Totally, yes. Mhm.
And so the realization hit me, it knocked me, it just knocked me, it knocked the wind out of me. It was like everything we do, say, hear, feel, touch, be, are, is seen. And that this is no joke. And that when we are traversing life, there is nothing petty about it. Nothing petty about it. And that every single word we say, every act of kindness, everything we do is seen, is acknowledged in that inner verse. And we need to start cherishing and holding it as such. That was the first. I'd say the second is that our capabilities, we are powerful than we could ever understand. And that when we choose to intuit and call something to ourselves, that we do, we are capable of it. And we take this so for granted. And we are loose with our words and loose with our thoughts. And we use excuses in this human experience to say, well, that's my justification. And there is none. We need to be cognizant of the powerful beings that of light that we are, and that everything we do has a ripple effect.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
It truly does.
mhm, mhm.
That was the second triad. And the third, I think it came from the profound experience that when I was on vision quests in the Appalachian Mountains with the Lakota, with my grandmother Shirley, God bless her. And I had fasted up in the mountains for 4 days. And it was the night before the day I was supposed to, if I, if I had made it through the whole vision quest. And I was visited and given this small little sweet thing of honey and just a little something added to the honey. But it took me on an experience. And because my body had fasted, it took me on an experience beyond my wildest dreams. And that's when I realized I was a dimension walker.
Oh.
And that moment of being there and then going on that quest that night, I saw things that I'd never seen before. And I was able to traverse worlds.
Mhm,
I was able to walk into a world and see a whole nother area of the world, and then come from that world and go to another, and come from that world and go to another, and come from that world and go to another. And the experience that brought helped me to understand that we are so infinitesimally small, but yet so grand. And I'm going to caveat that with, in our human eyes, we see small as small. But in the universe eye, small is grand.
Mhm.
So look at that size of a penny and then have the concept that a whole universe is in that penny.
Or
And then
grain.
understand exactly. And that is the difference between that understanding that we come from something so special. And that when we can grasp the gifts that we're given, when we can have unfettered release of the boundaries that we put in place and the confinements that we put in place and the fact that we're capable of expanding, and then when we choose to expand, we expand so vastly in many worlds, not just this one. And that we can walk into another world and expand and correct ourselves in another world, come back and walk into another world and just be the observer in another world and come back and go into another world and plant the seeds for what we need here in this world.
Amen, sister. You got a witness.
So
Thank you, thank you. Wow. Wow,
I
wow.
look at that and I go, we are powerful beyond our comprehension.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
And know that they don't, when I listen to people and they're operating in a bubble like this, and I just like, oh, expand. But
You
then
know, go ahead.
I'll just say this, that we put boundaries around things because we're afraid to expand, because when it's too much, we jump into the emotion of fear, and then we go, it's too much, it's too much, it's too much. I need boundaries. And that's what happens. And so those those would be my sacred trinities.
Well, you know, I've asked that of a lot of people. And where that came from is, you know, let's imagine we're sitting around a campfire at night and we're exchanging stories. And not really with on purpose, but that just kind of evolves. You're sitting around a campfire and one person starts sharing something. But there is a thing that I've noticed. There's a lot of, for lack of a better phrase, you might call it spiritual competitiveness. Or I've been toying with the word like the know-it-all-aholics. Like to have wisdom, but to not have it affect the ego, and to remain heroically, to have a heroic humility and to be humble and more gracious than graciousness can almost be about what you've experienced. And to have something that your heart knows to be true and to share it with love and joy and compassion. I was thinking that if you went down to the essence, the stories being told around the campfire would really have I think, a greater impact. Because like I'm listening to you and I'm going, wow. And I've been playing with that word wow lately, like the wealth of wisdom or the wonder of wisdom. You know, the wealth of wisdom in your sharing and answering that question pertaining to the Trinity of inspiration, it's so profound. And you spoke about being cognizant of our power, who we are, and just what the utterance of a word can mean. And people's names are slipping my mind at the moment, but there is a woman who wrote a book, and I think it's called Word Spell. And I wrote it down, it's in my notes, and I've got to find it because it's a book that was so incredibly popular. It's been sold out for a long, long time. And I've seen her on a podcast, but she deals with words, and she says, you know, what you said, that words are not just play toys.
No.
They're tools, and they're more than it. You can cast a spell with the words you speak. And you can speak into reality the life you seek. And her approach with this, I think it's called Word Spell, was basically saying, you are, whether you know it or not, you're casting a spell with your thoughts, your words, your actions. And you probably know what cocktail party rules are. You know what the cocktail party rules are? No discussing religion or politics.
Right. Yes.
Well, I hope I don't distract from this beautiful conversation by bringing up that word politics, but we are in a very highly infused political moment across our globe. They're saying that there are more elections going on this year than ever before, where people expressing their sensibilities and what they're sensitive to, their desires and wishes, what they would like to see manifest, should be when you vote by means of your conscience, when you express your support for someone or something, it's also a very powerful act. But unfortunately, the lack of integrity involved in political endeavors has caused in some countries a real polarization of family members, neighbors, communities, age groups, and is that where you are in South Africa? Are people concerned about what's, say, happening in the United States?
United States is always being watched. It's unfortunate that the opposite is not true. You could
Right.
go to any person in the United States and ask them, what are the politics going on in Angola? What are the politics going on in South Africa? They couldn't tell you anything.
Mhm.
But everyone can tell you what's going on in the United States. I've been to India and people are congratulating me on certain politicians, and I'm looking at them going, you don't have a clue. Okay. And I'm in Africa and they're congratulating me on certain politicians, or they're asking me, what do I think? You know, everyone, it doesn't matter where I am. Europe, you know, South America, Asia, doesn't matter. Everybody is looking at what the US does and formulating their opinions based on what they hear in the media.
Yes, yes, yes.
Which is unfortunate because I don't watch media at all. The last time I did, the activity of repeating what the tagline was for the day was the media. And so, therefore, whatever spin they wanted to put on whatever impression they wanted to create for whoever they wanted to create it for was it. And so, people are eating that food as truth. And that's unfortunate. which is why I love engaging people. I've been studying philosophy, and one of the basics that I've been studying is trivium and quadrivium and the basic logic, grammar, and rhetoric, and explaining to sometimes my counterparts that you need to understand the grammar, apply some logic before you start spewing that rhetoric. And I'll just leave it at that.
Well, thank you. It's a very precarious realm to enter, especially at this moment in time.
Yeah, it is. But you know what? What is supposed to happen is going to happen.
Aho, aho, aho.
What the reaction is going to be the reaction, and the growth that we need to go through, whether you're on the front lines, behind the lines, whatever the case may be, it's going to take place because that is how we have to grow and expand. And
Yes.
sometimes you go backwards before you can go forwards, or sometimes you contract before you expand.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so that's how I look at it. And if we get caught up in the emotional baggage that takes place while it's happening, you will make yourself crazy. Because as history is taking place, you cannot respond to every single little thing that takes place, but you need to step back and be the observer until you have enough information and then make a conscious act.
Oh, oh. Are you sure you don't want to run for office?
No,
I can
that's
envision
not my bailiwick.
there's a place on some cabinet somewhere for you. Come on.
It's not my but these are the things that
My heart
we
votes for you
saw.
no matter what you're doing. My heart is voting in your favor because I
Thank you.
cherish what you're saying and your perspective. And the reason I brought this up is that, and you may not have this happening in your family, but in families, there are 2 or 3 people that think this, and 2 or 3 others that think that. And there's all you've described about believing the spin doctored, gaslit, I call it the propaganda panda, without really searching your soul and listening and finding the logic inherent to the situation that's being considered.
You know, I'm going to pause you right there. That's the practical way, but I'm going to tell you what's really taking place. What's really taking place is that which was able to interject sides to confuse and create discord is at its best. Okay? I don't care if you talk black, white, good, bad, mask, no mask, vaccine, non-vaccinated, blah, blah. They have been good at this for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
Oh, yes, yes.
And we need to transcend
Yes, yes,
the humanness of this and see each other in mutual respect as the energetic beings housed in the physical container that we are.
yes, yes, yes.
And if we are able to do that, then we can transcend the garbage that we need to filter out that divides us. Divide and conquer was stated for a reason.
Really, yes, indeed, yeah.
And with colonization and with all of the things that have taken place in the history, especially in the United States,
Yes, yes, yes.
they are masters at creating the discord. And what's worse is that when you're in it, you're in the belly of the beast.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to see the light in the belly of the beast. So as an outsider in a non-English speaking Portuguese country, I am in bliss and can have this conversation with you because I'm not in the belly of the beast. And I don't even hear it. I haven't heard a word about politics except when something happens that's so profound, everybody's talking about it even here, and then I get wind of it.
Yeah.
But I don't, and it's so at peace and so calming. So as an individual where you are in the belly of the beast, in the midst of all that's taking place around you, be the lighthouse and let those who want to come in from the storm and have a conversation that is foundation on where it's supposed to be ready for it. And for those who don't want to come out of the storm, they will spin and they will spin and they will spin. And that's all we can do is be those beacons of light in all across the world.
Well, you know, I concur, divine dittos all the way, and it's a blessing to discuss this with you in terms of what I've been going through with some of my personal family members. I have 4 children. Now, they're not children, they're adults. But I've got 2 that think this way and 2 that think another way. And we have a family thread that on WhatsApp that I was watching. They were all talking about things, political things that are going on in this country. And I watched them for a long time. And it was, excuse me, it was a very uplifting experience to see them having different perspectives and different viewpoints and being able to discuss it without any flare-ups. And I knew a long time ago, like when COVID started in this country and people were in that temple of quarantine that I called the time of COVID a temple of quarantine. Not everybody was searching their souls and going into the quiet stillness and becoming introspective and honoring the gift of having that moment of not being out and about in the world.
That's correct.
But everyone was on social media saying this and doing that and splitting this, and you know, there was a lot of activity. And by happenstance, I got involved with a group of people on a group chat. And they were asking me to perform music for an event they were planning, which was a few months down the road. And I sent them music, and they liked my music. They said they wanted to have me come. And I usually, when I sign up for a performance, I get a 50% deposit immediately, and I sign a contract. But COVID was going on, we were isolated, and I said, well, you know, I will gladly do the event, but let's hold off on the contracts and the deposit because we don't know if we're going to be able to gather.
Mm-hmm.
But in the interim from that time to when the event was scheduled to happen, I realized that the people in this group were of a certain mindset pertaining to all the issues that were going around the social media madness.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that referred me to them because of the writings that I share with people. She said, you got to send these people your writings. They're going to love your writings. And they did appreciate and love a certain aspect of of my creative spirit. But eventually it dawned on me where they were coming from wasn't something that I could cater to. And with that particular group, I didn't really say anything about it, but there were some other people that are very close friends to the lady that I've been with since 2014, her name is Deborah. Her very, very, very best friend is in another political world than we are. And it's been a challenge. It's like you really got to honor those cocktail party rules, because we like to go out to lunch with her every now and then, but certain things can't be spoken of. And I'd rather be apolitical, and like you mentioned, when you're out of the world, when you're out of the United States, and you're not watching and hearing about all this day in and day out, it's such a breath of fresh air. I remember I was in Germany, and I went to Germany a lot in the early, like right when the European Union was formed.
Mhm.
And there were things going on, and there's always something going on in Afghanistan or Iraq or Iran or the Gaza Strip, and all these activities that humans are involved in. And you notice how it's approached from one country. And then in Germany, their approach was, I mean, they didn't censor. Like when they showed a bombing scene, they didn't censor anything pretty much. You saw the blood, the guts, and the gore was reported on. But then you've got the idea of the essence of those who own these media outlets have agenda. And
They
you
do.
start noticing what their agenda is. If you're able to see through the smoke and mirrors, you get a sense of what these people are promoting, what they're about. And so with my children this last week or so, that first conversation I witnessed with them, having an open-hearted discussion, being able to have a discussion and share conflicting perspectives without any flare-ups, I wrote this piece and told them how much I loved them and how much I really appreciated the fact that they could do that amongst one another. But there's been some other aspects popping out, and there's so much going on, and they're so involved, and they're going through these exchanges on a day-to-day basis. And you might say certain tactics that one would use in a conversation with another person that doesn't see eye to eye with you. Those tactics are repeated, and they're used to undermine and belittle the other person's perspective. That tit for tatting, you might say. So it's been I'll just say this: please keep us in your prayers. I told them, we have the golden opportunity before we go to bed at night,
Mhm.
to pray for the world leaders, to pray for creation, Mother Earth and Father Sky. And if you have a sleepless night and you're not sleeping, when you're awake in the middle of the night, that's another opportunity. Thought, prayer, and contemplation. Bless the politicians that you love to hate the most.
Mhm.
Bless the politicians that you hate to love the most, the ones you love the most. Bless everybody. Pray.
Yes.
When you wake up in the morning, give some thought, prayer, and contemplation to hopefully bestowing, as you said, some love and light on the situation that all these people, places, and things are going through. But overall,
And
everything
also,
being in divine order is a key factor here.
yeah, and also arm them with facts.
Yes.
I would share with them the basis of logic and how, because politicians are masters, or their speechwriters are masters at using exactly certain syllogisms and everything else in order to get you to feel this way in the first place. And I would literally say, go back to Logic 101 and make sure that as you receive the information from the media or the spin doctors, that you take the time to break it down. It just takes the argument down to another level. Because when you can look at the object, the goal, and you can break it down to that level of dissection in an intelligible way, it gives you a whole nother insight. Because some of the arguments don't have an object. They just want to create an object, an argument.
Exactly.
You know, and that's the purpose of the argument, is that those arguments that just cause discord
And distraction.
and distraction. Absolutely.
Well,
So I would go there.
I agree. The armed with the facts is a powerful statement. Arm yourself with the facts.
Or the
And
facts of how the framework is delivering the information purposefully for you to have this argument. And maybe if you could transcend the argument, like if you took all of the feelings out of it and you just looked at fact, nothing but the facts, and then dissected it, what do you really have as the object that you were supposed to glean out of it?
right.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
I'm sorry, this is my
That reminds me of something I wanted to talk to you about. I have a brainstorm that I got about something I call Think Tank 7. Just as we're talking, we know the political groups, corporate cultures, they organize think tanks to brainstorm how to make their chosen agenda more successful.
Yes, they do.
So I've been yearning to, I call it Think Tank 7, to create a world citizens think tank. Because there's food, clothing, shelter, tools, amusement, love, and fuel. Not necessarily in that order of importance, but those 7 categories, I believe every sentient being on the planet, we share the necessity for food, for clothing, shelter, tools, fuel, amusement, and last but not least, but the most important of all, love. So if you, and just like you and I are having this conversation, if world citizens gathered around that fire, around in the global village that we are a part of, and shared amongst one another, my grandmother taught me these 3 things about food. Or check out these 3 ideas and inspirations pertaining to clothing. If we pulled that inspiration so it was available, open sourced and available to world citizens, I think it might exemplify all we have in common versus the things that we think make us dissimilar. So if you could give some thought to that, because you are incredibly endowed with talent and vision and know-how, that give some thought to how a world think tank could be organized and effective. And I call it Think Tank 7. Now, maybe it's a type, and maybe it's a website, maybe it's because I've been thinking of doing this, and I wanted to send out like a communication to all the people in my world that I know I can connect with, and say, what's your trinity of inspiration pertaining to food, pertaining to shelter? And you don't have to pay for this, you don't have to be a member in the country club of inspired ideas and innovations. We don't put a patent on it. It's open sourced. It comes from creation, and it returns from, it shares amongst those of us on an equal basis. It's like that thing that Buckminster Fuller spoke about, and having all of us having a direct line, a direct source connection to source. No middlemen or women necessary to interject or interrupt or distract or break the flow of you and I having that connection.
Mhm.
to all that is, all that was, and all that shall forever be.
I think that's a fascinating idea, and wow, yeah, I will. I'll embrace giving that some deep thought
Thank
because
you. Thank you.
open source, and for those people who don't understand what open source is that there's a certain amount of teaching that should take place without you having to pay, period.
Right.
So open source is a movement where a handful of major institutions have embraced it. You know, like MIT put open source, all of their courses in open source out on the internet so that you could study classes in MIT. But you have to be careful because people, privatizers come in background, and what they do is they change the model little by little until it's privatized and you pay again. So, you know, open source is powerful, you know, it's really, really powerful. And we need to keep it that way. We really do. So I hear you loud and clear.
Right. Well, I've been, we are at an hour and 8 minutes,
Yes.
but I feel we should continue
Okay.
at another time and another date. Is that possible?
Yes, it is. It absolutely is.
And once again, I love and adore you. I can't thank you enough for being who you are. And it's just been an ever growing blessing every time we get together. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm zooming. I zoom on Zoom. And you wowed
Thank
me
you
today, the
for,
wealth of wisdom that you've shared from your heart of hearts and from that journey of the heart you've been on. It speaks so incredibly, such incredibly pure and divine wisdom and inspiration comes through you. And I'm going to demand that my children listen to this conversation we had. Now, several of them joined in when you and I did the Infinite Way. The
oh,
first,
excellent.
the first two,
Yes.
they've been. I was surprised because I sent out a link to people and I didn't know if they would follow through or not, but I was surprised when they did. And it was an incredible blessing because that being these angels of synchronicity that we are, when we surrender to the flow and we just know that spirit is with us and guiding us, and we may not know why we're going to that place, and we may not know the history of that place, but wherever that place that might be, there are people and things and situations and circumstances just knowing we're coming. And when we get there, they say, "Hey, I knew you were coming." And that
Yes.
just
Yes.
continues to, as you said so beautifully, confirm who you are, why you're here, and where you're from.
Thank you. I would leave the studio audience with just a couple of words that I love to share. Dream a beautiful dream or you will be dreamt. And I love saying that because if you don't hold a vision for yourself, how you see yourself, how you perceive, where you want to walk your life towards that vision, then you will be dreamt. You will be living your life with what people project you to do. And it's like a dangling carrot. It never ends. You never live up to other people's expectations. So we need to learn how to stand in our truth. We need to learn how to hold the vision for ourselves and make our lives that walk to our vision, our truth, so that we won't be dreamt. And I think that's really important, especially at this time. So I'll leave it at
Thank you,
that.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, you know, I had this saying that came to me, we are dreams dreaming dreams into dreams.
Mm,
But as you say, dream your dream or you will be dreamt.
that's right.
Bless you, bless you. Thank you so very much.
Mm,
And
thank you for
to,
having me.
to be continued.
Yes.
And
Take care.
congratulations on your wedding, your
Thank
marriage.
you. Thank you very much.
I thought you were going to be waiting for me, but it's okay. Next time around. Bless you.
Bless you.
Well, that's it for here and now. But until we meet again, this has been Louis-Virie Blanche thanking you for listening to Conversations with Elders. Bless you.
Quantum physics and the kitchen sink. The energy that follows the thoughts you think. Quantum physics and the cosmic sea. Laws of nature too heavy for me. It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic, much too cosmic.